Hey there, and welcome to Tales by June, where hearts break, heal, and sometimes seek revenge. Let's begin today's story.
Hey, before we begin, let me know where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. My name is Lisa. I'm 27 years old and currently working as an executive assistant in a small but steady advertising firm in Chicago. Life wasn't always smooth, but I've always found joy in little things. A cup of coffee with the sunrise, long walks when the streets are quiet, or the way my mom hums old songs while cooking. I come from a close-knit family, the kind that celebrates every birthday with homemade cake and stories from childhood. Growing up, I believed in the magic of love, the type that grows quietly and holds on through everything. And that's exactly how I fell in love. I met Ryan during college orientation week. I was just 20, nervous, holding a crumpled campus map, looking for the economics building. He saw me struggling and walked up with a charming smile. "You look lost," he said, grinning. "I am," I admitted. "I can't figure out this upside-down map." He laughed, took it from my hands, and turned it right side up. "There. Much easier to follow when it's not upside down," he said, his fingers brushing mine. We clicked from that moment. Our first date was just coffee in a campus cafe, but we ended up talking for hours until the cafe closed. He wasn't flashy or loud. He had this calming energy, like nothing could go wrong when he was around. For the next 5 years, we were inseparable. From late-night study sessions to spontaneous road trips, from fighting over which pizza topping to order to celebrating job offers, we were partners in everything. When I got my first real job, he showed up with flowers and a handwritten note. When he graduated a year later and landed a position at a tech firm, I cooked dinner for him despite nearly burning the lasagna. We dreamed together. We talked about living in a cozy apartment, getting a dog, maybe a house in the suburbs someday. I wasn't in a rush to get married. Neither was he. We were building a future, one day at a time. But lately, he's been different. At first, it was subtle. Fewer texts during the day, fewer late-night calls when we couldn't meet. He'd cancel dates and say work ran late, but then I started noticing something else. Something that didn't feel like just work stress. Her name was Emily. He mentioned her one night casually. "Emily's joining our team next week. We go way back. Childhood friends," he said. "She just moved here. Crazy small world, right?" "Yeah," I said, smiling politely. "That's nice." I meant it too. I didn't feel threatened. Not then. I mean, he was mine, right? We had 5 years of memories of growing up together. Why would I worry about someone from his past? But then came the small changes. Suddenly, she was everywhere. She started coming up in every conversation. Emily and I used to ride our bikes through the woods near our neighborhood. We even had a treehouse. Emily always hated strawberries, just like me. It's weird how much we still have in common. Emily had a rough breakup recently, poor thing. She's really leaning on me these days. At first, I listened patiently. I didn't want to seem insecure. But deep down, a quiet ache started to bloom in my chest. When I'd suggest we do something together, he'd hesitate. I already promised Emily I'd help her move into her new apartment. Or, Emily wanted to try that new Italian place this weekend. I kind of already made plans with her. It started happening more often. He'd cancel our plans last minute. He forgot our 5-year anniversary dinner reservation. That one stung the most. I waited at the restaurant for an hour. When I called, he picked up, laughing in the background. "Oh shoot, Lisa, I totally forgot. Emily and I got caught up watching this old movie we used to love as kids." That night, I cried myself to sleep. And the worst part? I didn't even blame him. I blamed myself. Maybe I wasn't fun enough anymore. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. I started doing more, dressing up when we met, cooking his favorite meals when he stopped by, even learning to like the action movies he enjoyed. But the more I tried, the more distant he became. One evening, as we sat on the couch, him scrolling through his phone, I turned to him and asked gently, "Ryan, is something wrong between us?" He looked up, almost surprised I was still there. "No. Why would you think that? You seem distant, like I'm not really here sometimes." He sighed. "Lisa, not everything's about you, okay? Work's been crazy, and Emily's going through a lot. I'm just being there for her. Don't make it something it's not." I nodded slowly. biting back the tears. But deep down, I knew. I was slowly being replaced. Not with another girlfriend. No, that would have been easier to call out. But with someone who wore the mask of just a best friend. Someone who knew his past better than I ever could. Someone who had memories from before I even met him. Emily didn't just become his emotional anchor. She became the center of his world. And I? I became a shadow. But things were only about to get worse. Much worse. Meeting your boyfriend's parents is supposed to be a special milestone. A kind of silent approval that your place in his life is secure. That's what I told myself when Ryan invited me over to his parents' house for dinner, almost 2 years into our relationship. But from the very beginning, something felt off. His mother was polite, yes, but in that cold, distant kind of way that made me feel like I was just another guest. She smiled, but it never reached her eyes. "Lisa, was it?" she asked when I first walked into their home. "You work at that little company, right? The advertising one?" "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "I work as an executive assistant." "Oh," she said, nodding slowly, as if that was somehow beneath the kind of woman her son should be with. Ryan didn't notice the subtle tension. He was too busy catching up with his dad over sports. I tried to engage in conversation, but it was like I was always just a beat behind. Like I had stepped into a play that had already started without me. His father was kinder, more reserved, but the questions were always the same. "How long do you plan to stay in your current role? Do you think that job can really support a future with someone like Ryan? He has big goals, you know." And then came his friends. I met them during a weekend trip Ryan planned with his old high school crew. We were all supposed to spend the day at the lake, boating, barbecuing, laughing. But laughter came at my expense more often than not. "You're Lisa, right?" one of the guys Drew said, eyes scanning me up and down. Wow. Ryan used to date girls who were, more outgoing, but I guess quiet types are cool too. I laughed awkwardly, pretending I didn't hear the insult wrapped in fake kindness. Another girl, Amanda, chimed in. "Ryan always said he'd end up with someone who matched his energy. But hey, opposites attract, right?" The jokes kept coming. Subtle digs, fake smiles, long stares when I didn't know some inside joke from their past. But the worst part? Ryan never defended me. He'd laugh along sometimes. Or worse, he'd just ignore it completely. As if staying silent would make it all go away. Still, I stayed. Because I believed in what we had. I believed he loved me, and that was what mattered most. I told myself his friends didn't need to love me. He did. But that all changed after Emily came back into his life. Suddenly, I saw the difference. The way his friends lit up when she entered the room, the way they hung on to her every word, laughed at every joke, nodded in admiration at her stories. "Emily, you haven't changed at all," Amanda squealed, hugging her tight. Still glowing like always. "I swear, you and Ryan were meant to be," Drew said, nudging Ryan with a smirk. "And Ryan?" He didn't say anything to stop it. He just smiled. At first, I laughed it off. I told myself, they're just joking, they're reminiscing. She's part of his past. But with every hangout, every dinner, every get-together where I sat quietly while they talked over me, around me, about memories I wasn't part of, I started to feel it. I wasn't just an outsider. I was unwanted. One evening, after another awkward dinner where Emily stole the spotlight and I felt like wallpaper, I pulled Ryan aside. "Do your friends not like me?" I asked quietly. He looked surprised. "What? No, Lisa. They're just close to Emily. That's all." "I feel invisible when she's around," I admitted, voice trembling. "It's like I don't even exist." Ryan sighed, clearly annoyed. "Lisa, why are you always reading into things? They've known her forever. She's like family. You don't have to compete with her." "I'm not trying to compete," I said. "I'm just trying to matter." He didn't respond, and in that silence my heart cracked just a little more. But still, I stayed. Because I loved him. Because I believed love meant being patient, being kind, giving people time to figure things out. What I didn't realize then was that love should never feel like begging for a seat at someone's table. It should never make you feel like a guest in someone else's story. And soon, I would find out just how deep the betrayal could go. Sometimes it's not one big moment that shatters your heart. It's a series of small, painful cracks, one after the other. That's how it was with Ryan. After the awkward dinners, the dismissive friends, and the way Emily's name kept echoing louder in our lives than mine ever did, I still tried to hold on. I kept telling myself, he loves me. He's just distracted. It'll pass, but it didn't. The first real slap came on a Saturday morning. I had spent the night at his place, and he had promised we'd spend the day together, just the two of us. No work, no Emily, no distractions. I woke up early, excited. I even made breakfast, eggs, toast, and his favorite black coffee. I wore the blue hoodie of his he always said I looked cute in. When he walked out of the bedroom, hair still messy from sleep, I smiled and said, "Surprise breakfast date. Just us." He barely glanced at the table. "Oh, hey, this looks great, Lisa, but I kind of forgot. I told Emily I'd help her pick out curtains for her new apartment today." My heart dropped. "Curtains? Ryan, we had plans. You said today was for us." I know, but she doesn't know the area well, and she asked me last night." "It's not a big deal." "It is to me," I whispered. "It's always her now. Don't you see that?" He rolled his eyes and grabbed his keys. "Don't start, Lisa. It's just curtains. I'll see you tonight, okay?" I sat at the table, staring at two untouched plates of eggs, and for the first time I didn't cry. I just felt hollow. A week later, Emily showed up unannounced. I was at Ryan's place again, folding laundry in the living room when I heard the knock. He was in the shower. I opened the door, and there she stood, her perfect waves bouncing over her shoulders, her perfume heavy in the air. "Oh," she said, eyes scanning me up and down. "Didn't realize you were here." "I live here too," I said, even though I didn't. "Not really. I just stayed often enough to pretend I did." She walked in without being invited, tossed her purse on the couch like she owned it, and flopped down with a dramatic sigh. "Ryan said he might come with me to this gallery event tonight. It's very exclusive. I got us on the list." I clenched my jaw. "He said he had dinner plans with me." She gave a mocking smile. "Oh, maybe he forgot. That night, he didn't go with her. But he didn't take me to dinner either. He said he was tired and stayed in." Emily always knew just where to press. Her compliments came laced with venom. Her casual mentions of their childhood memories always happened when I was around. The worst part? Ryan never stopped her, never noticed how she chipped away at me, piece by piece. But the day everything really fell apart was the day my parents came to visit. It was a big deal. They were traveling 3 hours just to meet Ryan, to see where we were heading in our relationship. They'd always liked him from the stories I told. This was the first time they'd meet him in person, and I wanted it to be perfect. I reminded Ryan 3 times. I texted him that morning. He replied with a thumbs up emoji. By 6 p.m., my parents were at our apartment, sitting on the couch, sipping tea. I kept glancing at the door, smiling nervously, making excuses. "Maybe traffic," I said. "He said he'd be here." My dad nodded slowly. My mom smiled politely, but I could see the disappointment in their eyes. By 7:30, they stood up. "We should head back, sweetheart. It's getting late," my dad said gently. I walked them to the elevator, my chest burning with humiliation. 10 minutes after they left, Ryan walked in, laughing at something on his phone. "Hey," he said casually, setting his keys down. "Emily and I went to that pop-up food truck fair downtown. You would have liked it." I snapped. "You forgot, didn't you?" I said, my voice shaking. "My parents were here." "They were here, Ryan!" He blinked. "Wait, what? That was today?" "Yes," I screamed. "I reminded you 3 times. I texted you this morning." He looked down, guilt flashing across his face, but only for a second. "I'm sorry. I lost track of time. It was just Emily mentioned this thing last minute, and..." I threw the cushion at the floor. "Do you hear yourself? It's always her, Ryan. Always. I don't matter anymore. I've become background noise in your life." He raised his hands defensively. "Lisa, calm down. You're overreacting." "Overreacting?" I laughed bitterly. "You humiliated me in front of my parents. They came all this way to meet the man I've been with for 5 years, and you blew them off for food trucks with your best friend." He didn't respond. So I kept going. "You've changed. You don't see me. You don't hear me. I'm not your priority anymore. She is. And don't tell me she's just a friend, because if she is, why does she make me feel like a stranger in my own relationship?" He exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "This is exhausting, Lisa. You always make everything about her. Can't you just trust me?" "I did," I whispered, the tears finally breaking. "For 5 years, I did, but you've given me nothing lately to hold on to. He didn't come over to comfort me. He didn't apologize properly. He just walked away into the bedroom and shut the door. And I stood there, shattered. I knew in that moment something was dying, not my love for him. That had died a long time ago. What died was my hope that he'd ever fight for me again. After that fight, things didn't get better between Ryan and me. They just got quieter. Not the good kind of quiet. Not the peaceful kind where two people understand each other in silence. No. This was the kind of quiet that stretches between two people like a wall. He stopped calling as much. I stopped texting first. When we were in the same room, we felt miles apart. We were drifting, and we both knew it. But neither of us had the courage to say it out loud. Then came the party. It was a housewarming celebration for one of Ryan's college friends, someone I didn't know well, but Ryan insisted I come. "It'll be fun," he said flatly, not even looking up from his phone. "Everyone's going to be there." Everyone. Of course, including Emily. The night of the party, I stood in front of the mirror, second-guessing everything. The dress I chose, the way I curled my hair, the shade of lipstick. I kept telling myself, just hold it together. Smile. Be pleasant. Don't let them know how much they've chipped away at you. When we arrived, the house was already crowded. Laughter echoed from the living room. Music played softly in the background, and Ryan's friends were gathered around Emily like she was a celebrity. She wore a red dress, stunning, bold, confident. I watched her toss her hair and laugh like she owned the entire room. And honestly, in that moment, she did. "Oh, look," Drew said when he saw me, raising his drink with a smirk. "Lisa made it." We were starting to think Ryan left her behind for once. Laughter. I froze. Ryan chuckled awkwardly, then shrugged. "She always takes forever to get ready." Another round of laughter. I stared at him. "That's how you defend me?" I took a deep breath and smiled, even though my hands were trembling. I moved toward the kitchen to get some water, needing just a few seconds to breathe, to collect myself. That's when it happened. I heard voices behind me, loud enough to catch every word. "She's so sensitive lately," Emily said, laughing. "Ryan told me she even accused him of choosing me over her. Like, can you believe that? I mean, I'm just his best friend." "I honestly don't get what he sees in her," Amanda added. "She's so plain. I always thought he'd end up with someone who could keep up with him, you know?" "Exactly," Emily said. "She's just—" She paused. "You know what? Never mind." The girls burst out laughing. I stood there, gripping the glass so tight I thought it might shatter in my hand. I turned around and walked straight up to Ryan. I didn't care who was around. "Can I talk to you for a second?" I said, barely holding it together. He looked annoyed. "Now? We just got here." "Now?" He sighed, muttered something to Drew, and followed me out to the porch. I turned to him, heart pounding. "I heard them, Ryan. Emily, Amanda, the way they talk about me, the way you let them talk about me." "Lisa." "No," I interrupted. "I've kept quiet for so long. I've smiled through their insults. I've stood by you while you pushed me aside for her. I've tried to be patient, to be understanding, but I'm done pretending." He looked frustrated. "Why do you always make everything about Emily?" "Because you make everything about her." I snapped. "You defend her. You prioritize her. You lie to cover for her. And when people humiliate me, you laugh with them. Do you even see me anymore, Ryan?" His jaw clenched. "You're being dramatic." "No, I'm being honest." A silence fell between us. I could see it, the part of him that wanted to care and the part that was already gone. Then, the door opened behind us. Emily. "There you two are," she said sweetly. "We were wondering if Lisa was okay." I turned to her, fire in my chest. "I heard what you said." She blinked, feigning innocence. "What do you mean?" "In the kitchen. About me. About how I don't deserve him." She scoffed. "Oh, come on. We were just joking." "Funny. I didn't laugh." Ryan stepped between us, his voice suddenly cold. "Lisa, maybe you should apologize." I stared at him, stunned. "Apologize? To her?" "She didn't mean anything. You're overreacting. Just say sorry so we can move on." "No." My voice cracked. "I didn't do anything wrong." Amanda stepped out behind Emily. "If you're going to keep bringing drama, maybe this just isn't the place for you." "Seriously," Drew said, joining them. "This is getting old. Maybe you should just apologize and put it to rest. Or, I don't know, maybe it's time Ryan reevaluated things." I looked at Ryan. He didn't say a word. He didn't defend me. He didn't look at me. Emily stepped forward, her eyes shining with mock sympathy. "Lisa, just apologize." Let's not ruin the night. And then Ryan, the man I loved for 5 years, looked at me and said the words that broke my soul. Either apologize or maybe we're done. I stood there, shaking. The tears were already falling, hot and bitter. I looked around at all of them, their smug, expectant faces, the way they waited for me to drop to my knees, to humiliate myself so they could feel powerful. I took a step forward, then I turned around slowly and walked away. Not a word, not a glance back, just silence. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in months: freedom. The Uber ride back to my apartment that night felt like a blur. The city lights passed me by in smears of gold and red, but I didn't really see them. I sat there, hands clenched in my lap, still in the dress I had worn to impress Ryan, still wearing the makeup that tried to cover the truth. I kept waiting for my phone to buzz. A message, a call, anything. It didn't. Not that night, not the next morning, not the entire week that followed. He meant it. He wasn't going to chase me, and that hurt more than the humiliation, more than the betrayal, more than Emily's fake smiles or his friends' cruel jokes. It was the silence that broke me. A week later, I handed in my resignation at the firm. I couldn't stand walking past the coffee shop where Ryan first kissed me. I couldn't walk the sidewalks we used to stroll on hand in hand like teenagers. The city had become a museum of memories I no longer wanted to visit. I packed up everything. My books, my candles, my tiny kitchen tools I once used to cook for him. And I left. I moved back in with my parents. The house I grew up in felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. Familiar, safe, and somehow heartbreaking in its own way. Because it meant I had failed. At love, at life, at everything I had spent years building. Mom noticed my swollen eyes the moment I walked through the door. "Lisa," she said softly, "what happened?" "I'm tired," I whispered, setting down my bag. "Can I tell you later?" She didn't push. She just pulled me into a hug, and for the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Really cry. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table in my old pajamas while Dad read the newspaper. "You know," he said casually, "we could use someone like you at the office." I blinked. "Dad, you mean it?" He smiled over the rim of his glasses. "I've been meaning to hire someone who actually gets how things run behind the scenes. And since you seem to be temporarily unemployed," I chuckled for the first time in weeks. "Thanks, Dad." "Just don't be late," he added with a wink. "Or I'll dock your imaginary paycheck." Working at my father's company was nothing like my job in the city. There were no 10-hour meetings or caffeine-fueled pitches, no fake smiles or office gossip. It was slower, quieter, honest. 3 months passed. I found myself falling into routine again, waking early, dressing sharp, managing operations. I liked the structure, the simplicity, the feeling of contributing to something real. And most of all, I liked not thinking about Ryan. Well, I tried not to, but sometimes, in the quiet moments, I'd open social media and torture myself. There they were, Ryan and Emily, smiling in group photos, clinking glasses at rooftop parties, his hand always somewhere on her shoulder or lower. His friends had clearly chosen their side. Their captions said everything. Open quote, "Reunited with the OG duo. Some people just belong together. Cheers to old flames that never died." Close quote. I'd close the app. I wouldn't cry anymore. But a small ache would settle in my chest for the rest of the day, not because I missed Ryan, but because I had given so much of myself to someone who never saw me clearly. Then one Friday evening, Dad came home with a bit of news that shifted everything. "We're signing a new partnership next week," he said, loosening his tie. "Local manufacturing company, family run. Great people." Mom looked up from her knitting. "Oh, do we know them?" "Not personally," he said, "but we've spoken over the phone a few times. I thought it'd be nice to invite them for dinner next Saturday. I want you both to be there." "Of course," I said. "Do they have kids?" Dad nodded. "2 sons, I think. One's in business school and the other already managing their export division. Around your age, Lisa. Sharp guy, very polite." I smiled politely, sipping my tea, not reading too much into it, at least not yet. Because back then, I had no idea this simple dinner would change everything. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't grieving. I was ready. Ready for a new chapter. One that I would write. Saturday evening arrived with a quiet buzz in the air. Mom had been bustling around the kitchen all afternoon, and Dad was obsessing over the wine selection, like we were hosting royalty instead of a new business partner and his family. I was nervous, not because of the dinner itself, but because something about tonight felt different. Maybe it was the way Dad kept saying, "They're a good family, Lisa. You'll see." Maybe it was just my nerves after months of trying to piece myself back together. I hadn't dressed up in a while, but I wanted to look decent, presentable, maybe even a little pretty, just for myself. At 6:30 on the dot, the doorbell rang. Dad opened it, his voice warm and booming. "Welcome, Mr. Bennett." In stepped a tall man with salt and pepper hair and an easy smile. His wife followed, a graceful woman in a soft green blouse, and right behind them were their two sons. The younger one, probably in his early 20s, had a huge grin on his face and was already cracking jokes before he even took off his jacket. But it was the older one, the one standing just a step behind the rest, who made breath hitch. Jake Bennett, tall, clean-cut, serious, broad shoulders under a crisp gray shirt, sleeves rolled casually, hands tucked into his pockets. He wasn't trying to charm anyone. He didn't have to. His eyes met mine for a brief second, and I swear, time stuttered. I looked away quickly, feeling the heat crawl up my neck. What was that? Dinner was lively, full of laughter and banter. So, Mom said as she passed the mashed potatoes, "What's it like working with your dad, Tyler?" "Tyler?" The younger son grinned. "Honestly, it's like The Office meets Shark Tank, except with more yelling and fewer commercial breaks." Everyone burst out laughing. Jake chuckled quietly too, his deep voice low but smooth. I noticed how he observed everything, said little, but took in every detail. Especially me. Every now and then I'd catch him glancing at me. Not in a flirty, obvious way. Just watching, as if trying to figure me out. I avoided his gaze each time, focusing on my plate or smiling at one of Tyler's jokes. "Oh, and let's not forget," Tyler continued, gesturing dramatically, "Dad still uses a flip phone. I swear, he's one missed call away from being cast in a documentary about the early 2000s. Mr. Bennett rolled his eyes. "Don't listen to him. That phone has outlived every single one of yours." "It also can't open a PDF," Jake added dryly. The table exploded in laughter again, and I couldn't help it. I laughed too. A genuine laugh. The kind that makes you forget, just for a second, how broken you used to feel. And that's when it happened again. Jake was watching me. Not with a smirk. Not with flirtation. Just something soft in his expression. Something like curiosity. Maybe even admiration. My heart skipped. I quickly looked down and played with my fork. After dessert, we all moved to the living room. The adults talked business, but Tyler and I ended up sitting across from each other, trading jokes and stories about the worst bosses we'd ever had. Jake sat nearby, quiet but present. He didn't try to dominate the conversation. He didn't need to. His presence was steady, grounded. Like a tree you didn't realize had grown tall until you leaned on it. "Lisa," Tyler said suddenly, "you ever think of joining your dad's company full-time?" I shrugged. "Kind of already have. Just don't have the nameplate yet." He grinned. "Give it time. You've got CEO energy." I laughed. More like get things done and go home energy. And again, I caught Jake looking at me. This time, he didn't look away. I did. Soon, it was time for them to leave. "You have a lovely home," Mrs. Bennett said, hugging Mom. "We'll host next time," Mr. Bennett promised, shaking Dad's hand firmly. "You're due for some of Linda's famous lasagna." Tyler winked at me as he headed for the door. "I'll be back to redeem myself in that trivia game you dodged." "Bring it," I said, smiling. And then, Jake. He was the last one to leave. As he stepped past the doorway, he paused, glanced back, right at me. I felt my breath catch again. Instinctively, I shifted behind my mom, pretending to adjust something on the entryway table. Why am I acting like a teenager? But even as I half hid, I saw the corner of his mouth lift. Not a smirk, just the faintest smile. He didn't say anything, and he didn't have to. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I didn't think about Ryan. I didn't think about Emily, or the party, or the humiliation. I thought about a quiet man who barely spoke, but saw me. And for the first time in a long time, something inside me stirred. Something I thought had died. Hope. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when my dad called me into his study. He was seated at his desk, fingers laced together, that unreadable dad face on. "Lisa," he said gently, "Mr. Bennett called this morning." I nodded, curious. Everything okay with the partnership? He gave a small smile. Better than okay. In fact, he brought up something personal. I tilted my head. Dad leaned forward slightly. He said, Jake, his elder son, has asked for your hand in marriage. For a moment, everything just stopped. I blinked. Wait, what? Dad chuckled. That was exactly my reaction. I stared at him. My heart was racing. My palms were suddenly clammy. He, Jake, wants to marry me? Dad nodded. They've invited us over for dinner this Friday. Said they want to talk things through, no pressure. But I told him I'd speak to you first. My stomach flipped. Goosebumps covered my arms. I wasn't ready for this. I hadn't expected it. Not so soon. Not from a man who'd barely spoken more than a few words to me. What do you think, sweetheart? He asked softly. You don't have to say yes, but I can tell you this. He's serious, and he sees something in you. I swallowed hard, heart pounding. I'd like to talk to him. Alone. At the dinner. Dad smiled and gave a small nod. Of course. It's your decision, Lisa. Entirely. That Friday evening, as we pulled up to the Bennett's home, I was a bundle of nerves. My mom kept adjusting my cardigan collar, and my dad kept cracking the same old jokes he always did when he was nervous too. The Bennetts opened the door with wide smiles and warm hugs. Oh, Lisa, Mrs. Bennett said, pulling me in like family. We're so glad you're here. Come in, come in. Jake stood at the back, quiet as always, but his eyes found mine the moment I stepped in. There it was again, that same gaze. Steady. Sure. Lisa, he said, nodding politely. It's good to see you. You too, I said softly, trying not to look flustered. I was absolutely flustered. They led us to the living room, where the fireplace was lit and soft music played. There was laughter, drinks, and Tyler already making jokes about which side of the family would throw the better wedding party. You know I'm the real catch in this family, he whispered to me at one point. Too bad you missed your shot. I laughed, easing into the comfort of their warm, lively home. Soon after, Mrs. Bennett gently tapped my shoulder. Would you like a moment to speak with Jake? We can give you some space. I nodded. Yes, thank you. She smiled knowingly. He's in the sunroom. He's been waiting. The sunroom was quiet, bathed in warm amber light. Jake stood by the window, hands in his pockets as if he'd been rehearsing something in his mind. When I walked in, he turned to face me. Hey, he said simply. Hey, I replied, heart thudding. For a moment, the silence stretched, thick, full of all the questions swirling in my head. I didn't expect this, I finally said. Any of this. Jake nodded, his gaze unreadable. I thought maybe it was some business formality, or your parents pressuring you. I mean, you barely know me. I know enough, he said firmly. I looked up at him. I need to tell you something about my past. He didn't move. I'm listening. And so I told him. I told him about Ryan, about the 5 years I wasted, about Emily and the party, and how I walked away, broken, humiliated, and empty. I kept my voice steady, but my hands trembled. I'm not perfect, I finished. I have baggage. I've been through a lot. I just need to know, are you doing this because you're being pushed into it? He stepped closer, just a few feet away, his eyes locked on mine. No one's forcing me, Lisa, he said, voice low but powerful. It was my idea. I asked my parents. I saw you, really saw you, and I knew I wanted to get to know you better. And if it leads to marriage, I won't just be okay with it. I'll be lucky. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. I don't care about your past, he continued. You survived it. That says more about you than anything else. I'm not offering you a perfect life, but I'm offering something real, something safe. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. He gave a small, reassuring smile. No rush. If you want to take your time. No, I blurted softly, my face flushing red. Yes. I'm ready. His eyes widened slightly. I'd like to marry you, Jake. He didn't grin. He didn't cheer. He just nodded once, slowly, as if something inside him finally settled. Then I'll do my best to make sure you never regret it, he said. Back in the living room, all eyes turned to me. I stood behind my dad, my cheeks burning, my hands fiddling with the hem of my sweater. I've made my decision, I said quietly. I'd like to marry Jake. There was a beat of silence. Then, oh my God, Mrs. Bennett exclaimed, jumping to hug me. My mom was already wiping her tears, and Dad clapped Jake on the back, proud and beaming. Tyler let out a dramatic finally and threw his arms around me. Welcome to the family, future sister-in-law. Thanks, I laughed, still shy. Jake met my gaze across the room. No words, just a soft look that said everything. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter and warmth, I realized this wasn't a second chance at love. It was the right one. The streets were lined with golden lights, buzzing with weekend life. Jake and I walked hand in hand through the wedding district downtown. There was something deeply surreal about it all. Selecting rings, flipping through venue brochures, and choosing between ivory and pearl-colored dresses like it was the most natural thing in the world. We'd only known each other for months, but it felt like I had known him in another life. The way he studied my expressions when I tried on gowns, the way he asked for my opinion instead of assuming things, he made me feel seen in ways Ryan never did. "You know," Jake said, stopping in front of a boutique window, "I think this dress would look ridiculously good on you." I squinted at the mannequin. It was simple, satin, off-shoulder, with a sweetheart neckline and no glitter. "You think?" I asked. He looked down at me and grinned. "It's strong, beautiful, and doesn't need to try too hard to be noticed. Kinda reminds me of someone I know." I laughed, my cheeks warm. "You're just trying to make sure I pick that one so we can stop going store to store." He raised his hands. Guilty, but also not lying. We ended the day sipping vanilla lattes, thus talking about flower arrangements and honeymoon destinations. For once in a long, long time, I felt normal. Better than normal. I felt like a woman being cherished. That's when my phone buzzed. Once, twice, 6 times. Ryan. Voicemails. Missed calls. 3 new messages. Open quote, Ryan. "Lisa, where the hell are you?" "I came to your apartment and it's empty." "I went to your office too. They said you quit. What the hell are you doing?" Close quote. My hand went cold. I stared at the screen, feeling the ghost of everything I had buried claw its way to the surface. Then more messages. Open quote. "Ryan, look. I know I messed up. I was stupid. I shouldn't have listened to Emily. But you've had your time to be dramatic. It's time to come back. Emily is willing to forgive. We can fix this. You need to stop acting like a victim and lower your ego." Close quote. My breath caught in my throat. Jake noticed my expression. "Who is it?" he asked softly. I turned the phone so he could see. He read every word. His jaw tightened. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "I'm not replying. I won't." Jake didn't push. He just reached over and gently turned off my phone. Good. 2 nights later, Jake took me to a luxury rooftop restaurant downtown. It overlooked the skyline, strings of fairy lights hanging like stars around us. He wore a navy blue shirt that made his eyes sharper, his jawline stronger. I wore the earrings he gifted me, the ones his mother had worn on her wedding day. "I could get used to this," I said as he pulled out my chair. Jake smirked. "Good, because I plan on spoiling you for the next 40 years. But fate, as always, had a cruel sense of timing. I saw them the moment they walked in. Ryan, Emily, and their flock of overgrown high school friends. Emily spotted me first. Her eyes lit up with vicious delight. She nudged Ryan, who turned and froze. "Oh my God," Emily sang, making a beeline to our table. "Lisa, wow, this is where you've been hiding?" Her eyes slid to Jake. "And who's this? Your rebound?" Jake turned slowly, fixing her with a stare that made her steps falter for just a second. Ryan stepped forward. "Lisa, seriously? This is what you left everything for?" "Hey," one of Ryan's friends chimed in. "Isn't this the guy who always looks like he's about to beat someone up in a bar?" Jake calmly placed his napkin on the table, stood up, and turned to face them all. He smiled politely. "I'm Jake Weston, Lisa's fiancé." Emily blinked. "You're what?" "Her fiancé," Jake repeated slowly, as if speaking to children. "As in, I'm marrying the woman you all treated like garbage." Ryan laughed bitterly. "Fiancé? Come on, Lisa. That's a bit extreme. You don't have to prove anything. Look, just come talk to me alone." "I have nothing to say to you," I said, my voice even. Emily crossed her arms. "You really think he knows the real you? The girl who begged Ryan to love her back? Who cried like a pathetic—" Jake stepped forward. The room quieted. He looked her dead in the eye. "Careful," he said calmly. "I have a very low tolerance for women who throw stones to distract from their own insecurity." Gasps. Someone nearby laughed under their breath. "And Ryan," Jake turned to him now, "you don't get to ask about Lisa's choices, not when you let her kneel in front of your little queen here while your friends laughed." Ryan's jaw clenched. "You don't know what happened." Jake's eyes narrowed. "I know enough. I know you humiliated her in public. I know you watched the woman you claimed to love break down just to feed your ego. And now you're angry because someone better picked up what you threw away. You think you're better than me? Ryan barked. Jake chuckled. No, I know I am. I don't need to parade my woman around to feel powerful. I protect her. Emily scoffed. Lisa, seriously, this guy? You always did like fixer-uppers. Jake turned to her, slowly. Funny. Coming from someone who's been with every guy in this city except the one who actually stayed faithful. Emily gasped, red-faced. Her friends went silent. Jake slipped his arm around my waist and said, Now, if you'll excuse us, we're going to enjoy our evening. You can crawl back to whatever drama circle you slithered out from. We sat back down. Their entire group stood frozen for a moment before retreating, whispering and embarrassed. As soon as they were gone, I broke. Tears filled my eyes, not because I was hurt, but because I'd never had someone fight for me like that. I turned to Jake, voice shaking. You didn't have to do all that. Jake gently cupped my face. Yes, I did, because no one else ever did. But I will. Every time. On the drive home, the city lights blurred past us. I leaned against him, silent. Then suddenly, as he pulled up in front of my house, I turned and threw my arms around his neck. I'm sorry, I whispered, sobbing softly. I'm just grateful. You have no idea what this means to me. Jake held me tightly, his voice steady. You don't owe me anything, Lisa. But I swear, you'll never feel small again. Not with me. The days leading up to the wedding passed like a dream. A blur of soft linens, cake tastings, wild laughter, and love-soaked glances across busy rooms. Jake's mom and mine became best friends overnight. The kitchen always smelled like something was baking. Tyler, as usual, took charge of chaos, dancing with my bridesmaids, making awkward speeches at the rehearsal dinner, and insisting on choreographing our first married couple dance, which, thankfully, we didn't let him do. But in the middle of the noise, Jake always found me. He'd steal me away for 10 minutes when everyone else was distracted, just to hold my hand, to remind me how real this was. I still can't believe you said yes, he whispered one night, as we stood under fairy lights in the backyard, 2 days before the wedding. I looked up at him, my chest full. You asked. You listened. You never made me feel like I had to earn love. Of course I said yes. He kissed my forehead, then smiled against my skin. I hope Ryan's crying into a bottle of cheap whiskey somewhere. We both laughed. But part of me still waited for the other shoe to drop. And then, on the night before our wedding, my old phone, long untouched, lit up again. Ryan. A single message. Open quote, Lisa. I saw the wedding announcement. I know I don't deserve to say anything, but I'm sorry. For everything. I hope he gives you what I couldn't. Take care. Close quote. For a moment, I just stared at the words. There was no venom, no arrogance. Just a man realizing, far too late, what he had lost. I locked the phone and slid it into the drawer. I didn't need closure anymore. I had everything I needed. The morning of the wedding, the sun poured golden light over the hills. Our venue was nestled in the countryside, rustic, elegant. Everything I never dared to dream. I wore the dress Jake had picked from the window that day. Simple, powerful. Me. As the music started, I caught sight of Jake waiting at the altar, his eyes locked on mine, jaw slightly clenched the way it always was when he tried not to cry. When I reached him, he whispered, You look like every reason I've ever had to believe in fate. Tyler cried more than both of us. Vows were exchanged through tears and laughter. You were the light in my darkness, Jake said, holding my hands, and now I promise to protect your light for the rest of my life. When it was my turn, my voice trembled. I thought love meant pain. I thought it meant proving myself every day to someone who didn't see me. But you looked at me, and I felt known. I choose you, Jake. Today. Every day. Cheers erupted as we kissed. I didn't cry. I felt more than I ever had. The reception was a blur of joy. Dancing, cake smashing, Tyler rapping. Yes, rapping a toast. Jake's dad tearing up during our first dance. And my mother hugging Jake and saying, Now you're our boy too. And then, it was just us. Back at the lake house Jake had rented for our first night. He opened the door like it was sacred, carried me inside like I was the most precious thing he'd ever held. I laughed as I kicked off my heels. I can walk, you know. I know, he said, placing me gently on the couch, but I've waited too long to not carry my wife over a threshold. We sat in silence for a while, watching the moonlight dance on the water outside. Jake turned to me, serious. Before anything else tonight, I want to say this. I love you. Not for your past, not despite your past, but because it made you into this, into you. And I'm the luckiest damn man on earth. My heart ached with joy. I cupped his face, eyes wet. I love you too, Jake. Thank you for choosing me before I even knew how to choose myself. That night, in the quiet glow of the fireplace, we became one. Not just in body, but in spirit. There was no rush, no grand performance, just soft kisses, whispered I love yous, and the slow unraveling of two souls finally at peace. The next morning, I woke up tangled in white sheets and strong arms. Jake's heartbeat beneath my ear felt like home. Outside, the lake shimmered. Birds sang. Good morning, Mrs. Weston, he murmured, eyes still closed. I smiled, burying my face in his chest. Good morning, husband. And in that stillness, I knew. After all the pain, betrayal, and loss, I had found what every little girl dreams of, but few ever receive. Not just love. Safe love. Strong love. Forever love. The end.